Hello, hello, and welcome back to my interpretation of Genesis. Moving into Genesis 4, Adam and Eve go on to bear their first children, Cain and Abel, where Cain becomes an agriculturalist and Abel a shepherd. Sacrificing to God, Cain offers grain and Abel offered the firstborn of his flock. While God respected Abel's sacrifice, they didn't feel the same towards Cain. And so, the same pattern continues to unfold between the noble nomadic herder who lives with nature and the settled farmer in a house of earth instead of skin. Reality is more rewarding to the shepherd in the same way that between the hunter-gatherer and shepherd, life favors the wild man, those who remember their theosis. There's also the stark contrast between the two sacrifices, one involving a slain lamb and the other little more than leftover grass, which points towards the ignorance of death that would continue to eat away at the, quote, more developed societies, until you end up in the modern West's complete repression and refusal to truly acknowledge death, postponing it with medicine, keeping loved ones essentially hostage to have them pass away without anyone there, and hiding the absolute slaughter of livestock from the public, leading to a culture which revels in indulgence and wasting time. When Cain becomes upset by this, God asked him as to why, and tells Cain that if he was only good, then he wouldn't suffer, but by not doing so, he's led astray and into hell. Which is just facts. I'd only add that there's always a way to pick one's head up and follow the right path again. It just won't be easy. Later, Cain talks with Abel, and it came to pass while they were in the field that Cain killed his brother. Historically, it was also the case that herding disturbed and contributed to the downfall of the original people's ways, and that agriculture did the same to shepherds. When God asks where his brother was, Cain retorts that he doesn't know, and asks with condescension if he's supposed to be his brother's shepherd. And in that remark, God understood what had happened, and says that Abel's blood cries out to him from the ground. And so God cursed Cain, saying, by the earth which drank the blood of thy brother, from your hand, when you till the ground, it will never again yield unto you her strength. A fugitive and homeless wanderer shall you become. And Cain replied, this punishment is greater than I can bear. I've been driven out from my home. From your face shall I be hid, and any whom I come to pass will surely kill me. And so God said, then whoever kills you will be cursed sevenfold. And Cain was marked, lest any finding him should kill him. This is a clear repeat of the same pattern established in the fall of Adam and Eve, where now Cain has committed the sin. Only it's even worse than before. As man strays further from Eden, not only are our mistakes not confessed or apologized for, but they are outright denied. And so again, God curses and consoles. Only now, instead of being grateful for what he still has in spite of this curse, which Cain brought unto himself, he complains that his punishment is too great, and his consolation is protection from outsiders who would slay him for the sinner he is. And so Cain was expelled from God's presence, and he went on to live an aimless life, dwelling in the land of Nod. Just as Adam and Eve were cast from the garden, Cain is driven into the nomadic life, where Nod is the root of the Hebrew word which means to wander. Only unlike his late brother, who traveled alongside nature, Cain travels in spite of nature. And as Jesus said, I am the way, without God, the objective or logos, one becomes adrift in life, and the world becomes like unto a prison. Then, there in his wandering, Cain created the first city, and names it Enoch, in dedication to his son. While it isn't biblically canon, in many Abrahamic traditions it's taught that Cain and Abel were both born with a twin sister, and Adam wanted each of his sons to marry the other sister, symbolically having the first heirs to humanity as diverse as possible. Cain rejected this wish, and so Adam suggested that the brothers make sacrifices and leave it up to God. In my estimation, this means leaving it up to their sisters. And after presenting what they had to offer, the sisters chose the other's brother. In naming the city after his son instead of his father, Adam, or God, is another symbol of increasing ego in the vain fight to acquire immortality by and for oneself instead of having it naturally delivered onto them through subservience and heroism. eating from the tree of life. Now, sorry for my poor pronunciation, but going through Enoch's family line, including Adam, lining up the 7 names and translating out of Hebrew, Cain's progeny reads as, "Man acquires dedication to the empire dragon, who proclaims and demands the death of God in despair. Adam, Cain, Enoch, Arad, Mehujael, Methusael, Lamech." This very dragon is alluded to in the book of Revelation, the crowned and 7-headed dragon which swipes a third of the stars down to earth, is a symbol of man-made government's fundamental, expansionist, and tyrannical nature. It's only natural that nationalism results in the questioning, denying, and even an outright will to fight against the belief in or the very idea of God. Running this pattern out to its natural conclusion, it's clear to see why Nietzsche proclaimed the death of God towards the 19th century's end. And it wasn't too long after Nietzsche passed away that the Nazis rose to power in his country and brought about some of the most despair in human history. And Lamech, Cain's great-great-great-grandson, took unto himself 2 wives, with one bearing the fathers of musicians and those who raise livestock, and with the other bearing the first of metal workers. And so this is the first instance of polygamy, where in creation, in God's vision and image, humanity is meant to be a coinciding of opposites between male and female. But now even that most fundamental pattern, which placed humanity as the image of God in the first place, is broken. And in regards to their children, modern music continuously associates itself with satanic and anti-Christian imagery. Livestock is another insult to Abel's image, where Abel tended to the flock following their lead. Livestock are herded in a controlled rotation around designated land and practically destroyed by humanity's artificial selection. And metalworks paved the way for more narcissism, materialism, violence, and exploitation of the earth than anything else, with the earliest metal tools being ornaments, weapons, and farming equipment, while the most recent are smartphones, guns, and industrialized farming, with weapons in particular being the pinnacle of technology's corruption. And then Lamech gloated to his wives, "I have slain a man and child. If Cain was to be avenged 7-fold, surely I am to be avenged 77-fold. Further and further does man fall with their so-called progress. People are killed to an extent now that becomes almost casual. Sins aren't even denied, they're reveled in. And murderers get away with killing multiple people, including a kid." Finally, Adam and Eve had another son, who they named Seth, meaning appointed, where Eve said, "God has appointed me another seed in Abel's place, since Cain killed him." And Seth went on to beget Enosh. And at that time, men began to call on the name of God in worship, prayer, praise, and thanksgiving. Sorry again for my poor pronunciation, but going through Enosh's family line, including Adam, lining up the 10 names and translating out of Hebrew, Seth's progeny reads as, "Man is appointed mortal sorrow, but the blessed God shall come down teaching, and his death shall bring the despairing comfort." Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah. This was the prophecy of the Messiah, of Christ, an oral tradition for thousands of years before Jesus, encoded into the progeny appointed to take the place of Abel, who was the good shepherd. Between both Cain's and Seth's descendants, there are 2 Enochs and 2 Lamechs. The Enoch, or teaching, of Seth safeguards humanity's faith in God as he lives through the time where lower dimensional cross-sections of being are worshipped as if they are being as such, and give rise to the Bronze Age pantheons containing the lesser gods of power and sex, for instance, each of these gods having their respective patron state, ironically enough with the first city-state of this kind sharing the name Enoch. The 2 Lamechs symbolize how in despair one can submit to God and find comfort, or in a sense blame God and take pride in their folly. Lamech named his son Noah, meaning comfort, saying, "Through all of our blood, sweat, and tears, he shall bring us comfort." and Lamech lived to the age of 777. In fact, most of Seth's descendants lived to be over 800, according to Scripture. Another pointer that we're dealing with a metaphoric space within Genesis. While being historically inspired is almost certainly the case, not to get into this too much, but it's obviously the case that the world and all life thereon wasn't made in a week. And people don't live past 130 years old, let alone 900, as most of Seth's progeny is claimed to have aged to. In Hebrew, just as with any culture, certain numbers carried a symbolic significance. And Lamech, whose son would go on to survive the flooding of the earth, living to 777, the same amount of days in creation, symbolizes the completion or end of this fallen era. Thank you for your attention, and I will see you next time.